Hello, I'm Dr. Luciana Monteiro-Krebs, and today, on behalf of my co-authors, Dr. Geerts, Mr. Sanders, Dr. Caregnato, and Dr. Zaman, I'm presenting our work Board Games as a Research Method, a case study on research game design and use in studying algorithmic mediation. Board games are traditionally studied as a research phenomenon. As an example, see the studies on the resurgence of board games due to internet fatigue, or the contribution of board games to understand human history. However, the board game's potential as a research method to understand user perceptions of new technologies remain unexplored. In this presentation, I'll show how we design and use the board game to investigate how users make sense of algorithmic mediation in academic social media platforms, the ASM. Studying technology, algorithmic mediation, and digital platforms through physical board games might seem unconventional. However, board games offer several advantages. They break the ice, creating a relaxed and playful atmosphere that encourages interaction among participants who might not know each other. Allow participants to envision futuristic elements, like new technologies, in a natural setting. With participants focused on the game, data collected is less likely to be influenced by their potential desire to please the researcher. And they ensure all participants have a say and contribute to the discussion. To facilitate the understanding of the next elements, I'll briefly explain the game. Players are given academic tasks and have to use the cards to choose how they would solve them. From their cards, each player chooses an approach, which can be collaborative, competitive, or ambivalent, one or two recommendation strategies, and one or two motivations for their decisions. Then, players present their board to the other players, seeking to earn citations, represented by tiny books, from the other players, and providing arguments for their own decisions. After that, participants vote secretly for best presentation, and after 4 rounds, the most voted player wins the game. We use the results of a platform analysis to create cards with algorithmic strategies used by digital platforms. We included human values as people's decisions are driven by personal or social motivations. The Serious Game Design Assessment, the SGDA framework, informed the design process, offering a structured approach to crafting research games. The AMAS board game is the result of an iterative design process involving careful planning, development, prototyping, and playtesting. We use the SGDA framework to adjust each element, content, mechanics, fiction, and aesthetics, after each playtest session, keeping successful elements from previous versions. Here are some key changes made based on playtesting. Content and information. Motivation cards were redesigned to include definitions and renamed motivation cards to dissociate them from personal values. In principle, values sounded very strong and permanent to the participants, so we explained that the motivations could change and be reordered according to the situation. Both strategy cards and task cards were redesigned for more clarity and context. As for the mechanics, the initial guessing mechanism was replaced with presentations and justifications for chosen strategies, followed by anonymous voting. The initial shared reward system was replaced with individual boards, and a hidden reward system, the bookshelf, to avoid strategic voting. As for fiction and narrative, players impersonate various researcher roles and are challenged with tasks they would encounter in real life. In the game, presentations and voting emulate the scientific conferences, reflecting real-life academic interactions. As for aesthetics and graphics, the initial vibrant colors were replaced with a more professional and elegant color palette, cool tones and matte shades, to reflect the target group and the game's seriousness. And here are some types of data that we could collect from the research game sessions. We performed quantitative and qualitative data analysis on data collected from 4 game sessions with a total of 13 participants. In the quantitative data analysis, we analyze participants' choices, cards or positions on the board to understand their preferences. We also analyze association between cards, for instance, strategy cards and motivation cards, to identify patterns on how participants linked different concepts. And we analyze specific niches, less popular choices, to develop archetypal profiles representing user behavior. In the qualitative data analysis, we analyze transcripts of participants' verbalizations during gameplay to understand the reasoning behind their choices, and identify themes in the participants' justifications for their card combinations. And here are our lessons learned. Lesson number 1. The quality of board game should be assessed from both a research and a game perspective. While research games have some similarities to focus groups or co-design workshops, it is a game, which means one needs to play test it in an iterative way and not only run a pilot test, as we typically do to test and improve a research protocol and its research instruments. Besides, the alignment between the game and the research should also be assessed. Lesson number 2. Adjust the language to your players. Avoid jargon or language that your players are not familiar with. The appropriateness of the language can be assessed during the playtesting with people from the same target group of the research project. Lesson number 3. Adjust the game mechanics in light of your data collection. The main goal of a research game is to collect research data and to not invest too much time explaining the game rules or risk invalidating data to misinterpretation of the rules. It is therefore crucial to design game rules that are easy to understand after a simple and short explanation. To do so, you can A. Create a short video with instructions and ask participants to watch it in advance. B. Play a start round for trying out the gameplay and to give participants the chance to try it before committing to the real game. And C. Make sure to answer all questions for participants before the game starts. Lesson number 4. Contextualize the game. Create a narrative that combines different aspects of your game into a coherent, meaningful whole. Consider adding roles to be played to encourage players to empathize and fully explore the narrative and properties of the game. And use humor or aesthetics that can be a game engaging. The fifth and last lesson is anticipate on how players might game the system. Thinking about the metagame and all possible ways a player can game the system, in this case, the research game, it is extremely important to get valid data. An interesting idea is to invite an experienced board game player to try to hack it, to find vulnerabilities in the game elements, and then, of course, change them. The case study presented in this paper shows the potential of using tangible board games in highly technological projects, where the object of study are algorithms on digital platforms. The study gives insight behind the scenes of the iterative design process, including a transparent account of the main challenges and how they were dealt with. We also show how board games have great potential to facilitate both quantitative and qualitative data gathering, as researchers can include elements they wish to investigate into the game. For instance, the moves of the players, the associations between different cards, and the social demographic characteristics can work as variables for quantitative analysis. As for qualitative data, by including a moment for players to express their thoughts on the decisions they are making, researchers can go into the sense-making of the participants and the reasons why people do what they do. Thank you for your attention. I'll be happy to take any questions you might have.